servicing. Oh. Good evening. Welcome to the Canadian Orthodox Monastery of All Saints of North America. And as we had mentioned, I promised to make recordings last night, but there was some problem with YouTube and I couldn't upload the recordings that I made, so they were lost. So I'm going to repeat some questions that I had received from some viewers, and I said that I would answer those before we went on with The Old Testament is About You. And by the way, I was looking at the rest of the book of Joshua and the book of Judges, and they're really quite bloody and violent books, both of them. And that in itself, of course, can give us an insight into humanity. But someone had asked me to make a comment on the idea that UFOs are demonic apparitions. Now, there are 2 points of view. Some people think that we have visitors from outer space and that all the governments in the world are colluding together to cover it up, which would be astonishing, because to get 3 or 4 governments in the world to collude on anything is difficult enough, let alone getting all the major governments in the world to collude. So I'm going to address both issues. The idea that UFOs were demonic apparitions started really in the Pentecostal church in the early 70s, I think 72 or 73. In that era, UFOs were all the rage. Everybody had to see a UFO. And we had many times people would claim to have seen a UFO. Usually it was an ordinary natural phenomenon which was seen as something which it was not. There had been a Pentecostal minister in, I think, New England, who was driving home with his wife one time, and they saw what they thought was an amalgamation of UFOs coming together in the sky. And he, of course, did not want to accept the idea that there might be intelligent beings on other planets. Somehow he thought that would interfere with the Christian faith. So he decided that these were demonic apparitions. And he wrote this to a local newspaper. The editor of the newspaper published his letter, but he and the reporters for the newspaper knew already that what he had seen was a pyrotechnic exhibit that was take place, or an exhibition of military pyrotechnics. And he became a bit of a laughingstock. Now, UFOs are ordinary phenomena explainable within the realm of ordinary physics. Electromagnetic anomalies, sun shining on a particular formation of clouds. There are all kinds of ways that people can see something and think that it's an unidentified flying object, which, well, actually it is an unidentified flying object, but it isn't a spaceship from another planet. So this idea that UFOs were demonic apparitions eventually worked its way into the Orthodox Church through 1 or 2 people, but really it did originate in the Pentecostal Church in 1972-73. And there was quite a big to-do about it at the time. It was supposed to be hailing the coming of the mark of the beast, and the world would come to an end perhaps in 5 or 6 years. China was going to invade Israel on horseback. The Tigris and Euphrates River were drying up, and the Chinese were buying up thousands of horses from Russia, and they were going to, why they were going to use horses is great mystery. But anyway, this was part of this whole picture about UFOs. And UFOs were popular because science fiction became very popular in the late 40s. We recall that when people claimed to have been kidnapped by a UFO in the early days, they were always kidnapped to Mars or Venus. When it was proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that there was no life on Mars and Venus, they began to be kidnapped by a different place, someplace farther away. So we, I think, can just discard the notion that UFOs are demonic apparitions. They're always things which can be explained as simple phenomena or can be explained within the realm of ordinary physics. The idea that people were coming from outer space and UFOs were crashing and governments were covering it up and all that is not particularly plausible either. We can scan solar systems fairly well within thousands of light years from us, but let's take, for example, a solar system 10,000 light years from us. Supposing there was intelligent life which was extremely highly developed and could do some kind of space travel, even have perhaps warp speed or something from Star Trek, they would still have to travel 10,000 years at the speed of light in order to come to the Earth. Since nothing can travel at the speed of light except light, and nothing can travel near the speed of light, so we would have to say then 15,000 years or more, because not being able to travel at the speed of light, they couldn't make it in 10,000 years. And we say, well, yeah, but the light that arrives to us from that planet is 10,000 years old. So we're seeing that planet as it was 10,000 years ago. Well, that's true. First of all, to assume that life had developed on that planet over a period of 10,000 years and become so extremely highly technologically skilled is a little bit outrageous. But there's another problem. The universe is expanding. So since the time that light left the planet heading toward us, the universe has been expanding for 10,000 years, and it's expanding at quite a phenomenal rate. Consequently, that planet, that solar system, might now be 20,000 light years from us. And a spaceship which left 10,000 years ago to come to us, traveling below the speed of light, would have a greater distance to travel with each year that passed because of the expansion of the universe. As they moved toward the Earth would be moving away from them, and their home planet would also be moving away from them. So as the universe expands, the distance one would have to travel gets larger. So putting aside these fantasies about wormholes that wouldn't collapse almost instantaneously and that sort of thing, it's ludicrous to assume that somebody from another solar system or galaxy are visiting Earth. It's just too beyond reason to think that anyone could travel that fast enough and far enough to actually do that. So I would like to say that we can dispose with either the idea that UFOs are demonic apparitions. That's really a kind of a theosophical understanding of them. They're all simply explainable. And yet people who like to believe in international plots and whose minds wander in the realm of fantasy will still continue to insist that it's people from another planet visiting us. So I just wanted to discuss that and give the reasons why I think it's ludicrous to have either idea. The idea that UFOs are demonic apparitions, as I said, is sort of a theosophical understanding of it. And it's common to people who have an ultra-conservative mindset to see things as being terrifying or fearful or somehow as evil or something in that category. And we've had a number of peer-reviewed university studies in the last several years which have confirmed what many of us always suspected, that ultra-conservatism is hardwired in people at birth, and that it's directly connected to an overexcited fear mechanism in the brain. And this is why it's usually in the conservative, ultra-conservative realm that we get most of the stories about